Hey guys, it's Dr. Rachel Ferrero here with Aviate Medical, and I am here with my good friend Don, who is going to talk to us today. Good friend and patient, and a backcountry pilot who's going to talk to us today about his journey getting his FAA medical certificate with me. And the reason we're bringing this up is because it's a very interesting case, an interesting pathway that has to do with alcohol history. So I'm going to let Don kind of give an intro as to who he is, why he decided to become a pilot last year, and what some of the challenges he thought he was going to face getting that medical certificate.
Hello, my name is Don Gage. After flying quite a bit with a friend of mine, I got myself into a spot where I thought I should get a pilot's license because we've been going to the Bob Marshall and wilderness and having I had a lot of fun. But flying the airplane is a whole different thing than just riding the right seat. So I started with a CFI asking about this, and I had to get a medical. So I talked to Dr. Rachel Ferraro here, and she provided me with things to fill out, and one of which the questions were, "Have you ever had a DUI?" And I answered yes. And then the next question was, "Have you had more than one?" I said yes. That opened up a Pandora's box. Long story short, in order to do this, we wound up. I've been sober 26 years now, so but I didn't realize I have no way of proving that. The treatment centers I went to no longer exist, and the paperwork I had I threw away about 10 years ago, and short of that, even the municipalities have purged their files and shortened things to where I was unable to answer the questions that the FAA wanted, and they denied me. And she went ahead and pursued this further, and we appealed in denial, and the FAA did finally grant me a student pilot certificate at the end of 4 months of random UAs.
Yep. Yeah. So I want to rewind for a sec because when I first met you, and I think it's important to note when I first met you and we first talked about you checking the box, because I think and I know now after numerous discussions and meetings with you that you can tell good sobriety by how honest and forthcoming you were with all of my questions. You were an open book from the minute you sat in my chair, and I said, "Oh, you've had a DUI," and you said, "Well, I've had several." And and I thought, "Oh, okay. Tell me about those." And so we started talking about them, and just the open book nature, just the honesty made you very, very easy, first of all, to work with. And I remember looking at you going, "This is going to be a lot of paperwork. This is going to be, you've got to go to two different, courthouses, and you've got to get records that have probably been destroyed." And I saw you 24 hours later, I believe it was no more than 48 hours later, with the stack of papers that I had asked you for. And I remember thinking when you left, I just gave him the biggest uphill battle. And he has been sober for so long. And to have to relive all of these things and get all of these documents must be so incredibly annoying. And I wonder if he's going to do it or if he's just going to say, "Forget it." And you came back within, I swear it was 24 hours with everything that I needed. And you just popped in, and I thought, "Oh no, he really wants this. Like he really wants this." And I go, "Well, here we go." And so that's when the journey began, and you provided everything that you needed to, and then a lot of education for me. And so I thought, for the general aviation community, there isn't a dedicated HIMS program. And so for those watching, the HIMS program is a program that works with pilots mostly commercial pilots. The HIMS program is for commercial pilots in the airlines to help them keep their wings while maintaining sobriety. And it's something they're in now for life. For the general aviation community, there really isn't a program to help you like there is in the airline. So for instance, your peer monitoring letters and your chief pilot monitoring letters and all that doesn't exist in general aviation. So when someone comes to me that's a general aviator and we have to come up with, well, what's the FAA going to want? Every single case is so different. And sometimes we just have to give them as much as we can, driving records, court reports, personal narrative and see what they come back with. And I remember when they came back with the random urinalysis and drug monitoring. I think you made a comment about going to one of your meetings like, hey guys, I'm back in monitoring after 26 years, after you had been a mentor to so many people. And it's exactly what you said in the beginning. There was no way to prove, to the FAA that you indeed were sober. So this was the proof that they needed. Um, and what did that those 3 months or 4 months that we had to get that testing, what did that feel like? What I guess describe to people who might have an apprehension to doing that. I'm not going to do that, or it's not worth it. Tell me kind of what you were thinking, or kind of what was the light at the end of the tunnel, or tell me what was going on. And
I guess there's a stigma as you walk in the door of the testing agency, or in my mind there would be, because I'm self-conscious about it. But it's a good character building experience. It's,
okay,
and again, I'm the one who got the DUI, so how could I possibly be upset?
right,
There may be a large amount of time between then and now, but regardless, getting a pilot's license is something serious. It's not just a motorcycle endorsement or something.
right,
So I understand where they would need to deal with this, especially I over the years I've noticed there's a lot of character traits and behavioral issues with alcoholics that they're going to need to get past if they're going to want to do this, because
yeah.
flying requires a little better discernment than just running around the ground.
If you don't mind, and if you're okay with it, with sharing, kind of publicly, so to speak, because this will be going on YouTube, how many DUIs you had, and sort of your sobriety journey. Because I think there's a different, some people will have, I've only had one and it was a point whatever, and it was expunged, or I've had several, so that means I can never be a pilot, or there's just this preconceived notion of there's a number that's a max, or there's a point of no return. And so I think your history would indicate that's not the case, if you're comfortable talking about them.
Well, I think we're dealing with 3 DUI convictions here that have caused this, and I think there might have been 1 or 2 that were dropped along the way as well. So there's a definite behavior pattern, and I think the fact that the FAA asks, did you not just have 1 DUI, but did you have more? There's a because people can accidentally get a DUI. It's happened, and I've seen people be forced to go to AA that I don't know that they were alcoholics. They just kind of got caught in the system, and you never see them again once they're through, because they might not have had a problem to begin with. Now, there's a level of discernment that you would think would keep them from getting a DUI in the first place. But when you have more than 1 DUI, it's probably because there's a problem there. And the hardest thing for the individual to realize is the fact that they have a problem. It's like trying to spontaneously generate knowledge. If you don't know, or you're unaware of something, how do you know? And that's where other people come in. And in my case, it was the court system, and then from there, treatment center, and beyond that, a sponsor. If you do have an alcohol problem, and along with that comes shame and guilt and emotional issues and things that are tied to that, and not just necessarily. We've found that upbringing really has nothing to do with it. There's people from all walks of life that wind up in AA as alcoholics, and I'm by no means a representative of AA, but that's been the saving grace for me to get me on track to be able to be a productive member of society. And it's taken a long time to say that. Fortunately, I've waited until now to seek a pilot's license. I don't know that 10 years ago I would have been in the right frame of mind to be doing that. There's decision making involved that, you know, holding to peer pressure, the things about that won't happen to me, things like that, that a lot of alcoholics kind of think the rules don't apply to them. And I would say I've been in that group. So it's taken some time to I guess to get the correct perspective to be able to handle this. I hope I have the correct perspective at this point. That's the thing. When you don't know, it takes time to look back and see, oh gosh, I was really off there. And there's no benchmark where you can check yourself as to how close to reality you really are with your thinking. So.
Yeah. You mentioned all walks of life, and I feel like this is a good time to, and I don't know that you ever attended, probably because you had your own meetings, but there is an organization called Birds of a Feather, which we may have talked about. They don't have any local chapters right now in our area. And, you know, for listeners, we're in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho / Washington border. And they are an all pilot AA group. And it's again called Birds of a Feather. And for those listening, you can actually connect via Zoom to remote meetings, and you will be in a room full of other aviators. And so if anyone's listening that's concerned about going to an AA meeting or getting help or seeking help because they don't want to walk into a meeting of strangers or people that don't understand them as an aviator, right? Oh, my story is different, and that kind of thing. There is this, and you can speak to that more than I can, but I had the pleasure actually of attending 2 of the Birds of a Feather meetings in person when I was at my HIMS conference and training. They were open meetings, and one of the things I remember both times, they were very emotional for me, sitting there listening to people be so open and honest and raw with themselves and with others. As I thought, I don't know some of these speakers, I don't know a more enlightened group, because I'm not sure that it is normal, or that most people want to have to go through a step program to rebuild them, not only from an addiction perspective, but just in general as a person. All of these traits that have been taking or overwhelming you, you now have to break them all down and then rebuild not only yourself, but what you may have destroyed around you. And I just sat there and thought, I don't know that I would want to do that. You know, like the bravery in that room, and I just felt very honored to be a part of that. And I'm sure a lot of the AA meetings are that way. But it was interesting that everybody in that room, we're talking just commercial pilots from around the world, New Zealand, all over, and just sharing so openly. I wanted to put in a plug for Birds of a Feather if somebody was considering, you know, I want to hear what other aviators are going through, or you know, just kind of to zoom in, we'll call it. And the other thing I wanted to comment on was we brought up your number of DUIs, but I want listeners to know that there are different realms of what the FAA will, or different pathways for different blood alcohol levels. So a one-time DUI, which you mentioned, let's say somebody gets a DUI, their blood alcohol is less than 0.15 when they blow, and it's a one-time offense. With all the proper documentation and paperwork, an AME can actually get that through pretty easily. The 0.15 blood alcohol is sort of the cutoff for the FAA, saying this is a dependence issue. This is not a whoops kind of thing. If it's a one time. And so even at your first, let's say you get your first DUI and it's a 0.2, you're over 0.15, and I don't think they consider that an oops, right? You were able to get into a vehicle, start the car. So that's sort of the FAA's cutoff, and understanding that when and if it happens to you is important. But even if that number is 0.2 on 5 occasions, you know, multiple DUIs, that doesn't mean you can never be a pilot again. If you're in active and good recovery, that pathway is still available, which is why I really wanted to kind of pick your brain about all this and to spread the word to other general aviators who might think that that's just not the case for them. Do you have any advice for any aviators who, first of all, who think that if they have this history, they can't become a pilot? And then my next question would be, do you have any advice for people who are currently struggling, maybe as pilots that don't know where to turn to get the addiction under control?
I think most people are afraid to let the cat out of the bag. They don't want people to know. Other thing is, it's hard for a person to come to terms with the idea that they really might be an alcoholic, that they're different from everybody else. They're okay with the fact that no one understands their situation because they're different from everyone. But on the other hand, to concede to being an alcoholic means that well, you're not the same as all the people around you, it seems. So coming to terms with that is tough. And usually the nice thing about AA is that everybody that you talk to, or most people you talk to, they can qualify. In other words, they're when someone's done the same or worse than you, it's much easier to talk with them about your situation than someone who's never experienced it. It's just really is. And that's the key to AA. That's why I ever say that. If anything you've ever learned how to do, when you first learn it, it seems almost too much sometimes, depending on what it is. Learning to fly is quite a thing to take on. And the idea that your life would be totally different, you'll never drink again, ever, and that saddles, or that it's difficult for a lot of people to try to wrap their head around that. The biggest thing is if you make a decision that you just want a change, and whatever it takes, you're gonna do this. That's really the biggest thing. To secretly hide the idea that I'm just going to get past this and go back to what I was doing, that is a recipe for disaster. If you do go through the steps, regardless of your situation, you will be better as a result. And there's a high likelihood that you'll be able to look yourself in the eye in the mirror and not have a feeling that you want to look away. Regardless of the alcoholism side of this, the first step is basically about all that has to do with alcohol. The rest has to do with you and the relationship you have between you and yourself. And an extension of that is how you relate to the outside world. And the higher functioning someone is, the more difficult it is for them to come to terms with the fact that there's a problem. It's one aspect. Everything else is great except for this. But as a result, if they push through this, they wind up better than they thought they could be.
What would you say, if there was a difficult part, was the hardest part of the medical process? Or was there? I mean, you seem to just kind of blow through it pretty easily, but was there something that you found difficult, or maybe advice you can give somebody that's preparing for getting their medical with this history, what you can tell them to prepare for that meeting?
It was a little difficult getting documentation from the municipality, especially because of the amount of time. And then sometimes it's inconvenient to go and test. When they randomly test you, they would send me an email, or excuse me, they would text me, and I would have exit by the end of the day to go get it done, regardless where I was at. Mm-hmm. So I had to kind of make allowances for that. And yes, you have to remember that this is a short-term process. It's all in perspective. Some people have a hard time with the higher power.
With what? Oh, the higher power.
Yes, with God and religion and all that.
Yeah.
And you'll hear AA is not about religion; it's a spiritual program. And myself, I had a problem with that at first, but I agreed to do what the sponsor said because that's what we're going to do. So I just prayed to thin air, and in the morning I'd say, "Please keep me sober," and that's it. And then at the end of the day, I'd say, "Thanks for keeping me sober." That's it. I could see my way to doing that. And that put me in a place where, number one, I was no longer reacting the way I normally would have. My mouth was shut and I wasn't getting in the way because I had stopped and I had drained thin air. I hope that makes sense.
Mhm.
So immediately, people's reactions to me started to change because I wasn't acting the same way as before. So regardless how you think the outcome of all this and whether or not you do or don't have a higher power, if you're Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, anybody can do this. And it's just a matter of making a decision to do it and see what happens at the other end. And you know, trying not to prejudge all this. It's and so if you are worried about your losing everything, if everybody finds out that you're an alcoholic, the likelihood of that is very slim. Very slim. And usually people wind up thinking better of you for tackling something that they might have known already. Most of the time, when you bullshit people and they don't say anything, you think, oh, I got away with it. Well, most of the time, no. They're just too polite to say anything.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really hope that this is helpful for people listening, not only in life in general, or if they're struggling with addiction in general, but for the aviation community to understand that there is a pathway and that um, having making poor choices in the past that may have even resulted in DUIs, jail time, convictions, whether expunged or not, doesn't mean that you can't still go after your medical certificate to fly, especially obviously in good sobriety. So I felt like this message was important for people to hear. To me, it's well, of course, but um, I that's doesn't seem to be the general consensus. So I hope this video helps people to understand there is a pathway. We're speaking to somebody who went through the pathway with me. It exists, and we just can do it together. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have
Thank you.
a great rest of your day. Yeah.